Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a solo episode, and I have a topic I want to dive into. And that topic is how to manage days when you are extra hungry. But first, before I go into that, just want to go over a few ways you can help support the podcast. So if you haven't yet, if you could, please leave a rating and review, and that will help more people find this podcast. And again, I appreciate everybody who listens, but I want to continue to grow this. And the best way to do that is by people showing that this is an actual helpful podcast. So if it has been for you, please leave that rating and review. And if you are new to this, obviously listen to a couple episodes first before you go and do that. Next, if you haven't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN_, and that's where I'm most active on social media. You can ask me any questions. If you have any questions on the podcast, again, that's going to be the best place to reach me there. With that out of the way, let's dive into today's topic. It is how to manage days when you are extra hungry. I'm sure you've had it, right? We've all had those days where you just feel like you could eat everything in sight. No matter what, you just can't get full, right? Nothing seems to fill you up. And sometimes we can't control when it happens, but luckily there are some steps you can take to manage those days to reduce the damage it could do. Again, I think one of the main things I want to do with clients is we want to find a way to help you feel full throughout the day. Now, in saying this, depending on what phase of nutrition you're in, that could impact this, right? Obviously, when we're dieting for fat loss, hey, there's going to be some hunger involved. But the big thing is we want to avoid those days where you're just ravenously hungry. We want to try to make sure we avoid that. But also, again, that's going to be the cost of doing business. So it's okay. How do we also manage those days there? Because again, that's when most people go off the rails. And so I want to dive into what that looks like there. Again, I think first here on this, it would probably be helpful to go over what are going to be some things that can increase hunger, right? So one, if you've been fat loss dieting. So if you've lost weight recently, again, you're eating in a calorie deficit, that's going to increase your hunger, right? So that would be something you'd want to look at there. Stress can be something that can increase hunger. For some people, it may do the opposite, but generally speaking, even if you aren't hungry, you're going to have this kind of propensity to want to eat more calorie dense foods, more tasty foods. Sleep's going to be another thing that can impact it, right? Poor sleep's going to make you hungry as well, right? How lean you are. Obviously, the leaner you are, the more likely you're going to be a little bit more hungry generally. Most people don't need to worry about this, but again, that is something that you'd want to look at. For my women, your menstrual cycle, those days, week or so leading up to your actual bleed, that's when you're probably going to be a little bit more hungry on those days. And then obviously days where you're like super active as well too. If you have some really hard training days, high volume training days, you may be a little bit more hungry there. I thought that was good to go over just because, again, that's going to help you understand like why you may be hungry. Because I think that's part of it too, is just that awareness around it there. All right, let's say we are hungry. Again, maybe those are the things that are going on. You figured out what the potential cause is, but at the end of the day, it's, hey, you're hungry. What are some things we can do here with that? So again, understand that if we're fat loss dieting, this is going to just be the cost of doing business. But again, it's how can we manage it? So this is all on the spectrum, right? So if we're in a maintenance phase, we probably don't want to be hungry throughout the day. If that's the case, we can implement some of these things. If we're in a surplus, we definitely don't want to be. We probably shouldn't be hungry, ravenously hungry throughout the day. So again, what kind of phase you're in is going to be important here, and understanding that, again, to fat loss, to lose body fat, like the cost of doing business is some hunger. So understand that, again, we just want to make sure that you're not ravenously hungry. All right, so let's go into it. So I did mention initially that high activity levels can increase hunger, but on the flip side, not enough activity can also impact your hunger, right? So we want to make sure we stay active. So when you are more active, you will regulate your appetite better. And this can also increase your energy expenditure for the day, right? I do think not moving can also lead to bored and mindless eating. So again, we don't necessarily have to have a super intense workout, or we don't necessarily have to get 15,000 steps, but we do want to make sure we get some activity in. So this is where if you're sub 6,000 steps per day, you're probably going to be a little bit hungrier. Again, your appetite's just going to be dysregulated from how much energy you're expending. So we have a higher risk here of over consuming calories, and you're also missing out on some energy expenditure, right? Also moving a bit more is going to increase your energy expenditure. But once we get to a certain point, there's that sweet spot of, I would say, anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 steps. Again, plus or minus 1,000 or 2,000 steps for some people. Once we get past that, or once we get outside of that range, we're probably going to start to be a little bit hungrier. And it makes sense that as we increase energy expenditure, now it's, hey, you're moving a lot. We need to eat a little bit more. So again, it's finding that sweet spot, but we do want to make sure we stay active. And I also think the staying active part really helps your body move that food around that you give it, right? If we're not eating, again, or if we're not moving, it's just like that food really has nowhere to go, right? So you can get backed up from that standpoint and have this energy overload there. And it's also helpful from like a gut health perspective, right? Not only from managing hunger, but again, there's a lot of other benefits of making sure that you just stay active. We want to reduce snacking and grazing, and we want to eat full meals. Most snack foods are calorie dense and increase hunger and cravings for more calorie dense foods, and they don't really fill you up, so you just want more. So again, if we're hungry and we're just, oh, I'm hungry, I need a snack, I just need to eat a little bit, again, that's probably going to be something that's going to increase your hunger and cravings more. So instead, we want to focus on balanced meals and stop grazing throughout the day. So what is a balanced meal? This is going to be a meal that has a source of protein. It's going to be a meal that has a source of veggie. It has some carbohydrates in it. Again, this is going to be depending on your goal, but generally speaking, right, this is going to be a meal that's, let's just take one like salmon, rice, and broccoli, right? That's going to be a solid full meal there with that, right? Versus a meal that's, oh, hey, I'm going to have a cheese stick and some nuts. Again, those are generally good food choices, but if they're just snacks like that, like it's going to be really hard to get full, and you're just going to feel hungry throughout the day. One of the best things we can do here is actually eat full meals on these days. Increase your protein for the day. Protein can be very filling, and this can help you eat less throughout the day. Again, if we look at your protein intake, are you normally eating 0.6 grams per pound of body weight? Hey, maybe we want to get closer to 1 gram per pound of body weight. Maybe you're already at 1 gram and you're fat loss dieting and you're feeling pretty hungry. Again, we could bump it up for that day. Protein is going to be very satiating. So again, that's a low-hanging fruit thing there to make sure that you can manage your hunger. Higher food volume foods. So higher food volume foods are foods that don't have a lot of calories for the amount of food, right? So think things like vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes. Again, a good example of this would be like 100 calories of watermelon versus 100 calories of like candy or something, right? Like you're going to get a lot more food volume with the watermelon, right? You're also going to get some water there. So again, we want to have these higher food volume foods with that. And again, this is going to help not only give you the vitamins and minerals that you need to help you feel full, but also they're going to add that food volume, which is going to help fill your stomach, right? Whereas if we have these calorie dense foods, it's just going to be really hard to get full there. Drink more water / calorie-free beverages. Again, drinking your calories does not fill you up. So it just adds extra calories to your day. And in some cases, it can increase your hunger and cravings. So on days like this, it's a good idea to stick with calorie-free drinks and water. Staying hydrated can also help with managing your hunger. So again, not only are we, getting some water in, which can help fill your stomach and can kind of help lower hunger, but you're also staying hydrated, which can help manage your hunger as well too, right? As being dehydrated can increase hunger, at least your kind of perceived feelings of hunger there with that. But I think the big thing with drinking your calories, and again, we're talking things like soda, alcohol, stuff like that, fruit juices, like these are going to be things that they add calories, but they're not going to fill you up at all. And I believe it was Harvard, they looked at this and they found that when people had just calorie beverages like this, they didn't compensate later on. Whereas when you eat 200 calories, you're going to compensate at least a little bit later on. Whereas when people would drink these calories, they would not compensate later. So it's essentially just adding in extra calories to your day, unless you're obviously tracking calories and you're accounting for these things here. So we want to make sure we're drinking calorie-free beverages on these days. Next, we want to make sure we slow down and enjoy. Eating slowly enhances meal enjoyment, and it helps with digestion as well too, right? This allows time for fullness signals to reach the brain, because if we eat super quickly, there's a little bit of a lag time there between your stomach and your brain, and that's a way you can hack your brain to eat a little bit more. And this can help control portions and reduce overeating there. Plus, the food choices we make are going to also impact this. As snacky, calorie dense type foods, they're going to be easy to eat very quickly as well too. And so again, that's another reason why they're very challenging to eat in moderation for that exact reason. So again, we want to slow down and enjoy as well too. But the big thing is really just slowing down, eating your meals undistracted at the table, not while you're doing work, not while you're like watching TV or doing a million other things. We want to make sure we take that time to eat and slow down. So the next thing would be don't skip meals. I think this is a big thing too, whereas you don't need to eat every 2 hours. We want to have these meals throughout the day. If we're skipping meals because say you're hungry one day and you're skipping meals because maybe you want to eat a little bit more later. Again, that's going to be something that's going to be really hard to manage your overall intake. You're going to feel super hungry on those days. So we want to try to eat at a relatively consistent eating pattern here. And again, that comes back to eating those whole foods, slowing down, making sure it has protein in it. But again, try to be careful with skipping meals. This is something that I see happen where, again, in theory, it's okay, hey, I'm going to eat less calories now so I can eat more calories later. And again, that can be a strategy if done correctly, but we don't want to skip meals entirely, or like your meals are typically 500 calories. We don't want to drop them down to say 100 calories, because again, that's going to increase hunger and it's going to be harder for you to manage things later. And again, that's not going to help your hunger in that situation. So again, this would be a strategy would be, hey, if you want to save your calories for later, you say you typically have 500 calories in a meal, maybe you're having 400. And again, it's more so high volume type foods, right? High protein type foods in that meal. Next, we have take 5 to 10 minutes to do something for yourself. And again, basically the goal here is we want this something that gets you to slow down for 5 to 10 minutes. This could be breath work, listening to calming music, journaling, something creative, movement, whatever it is. We just want to make sure that we slow down for 5 to 10 minutes, right? It's too easy to be on the go all day and not take a minute to slow down. And again, that's where we just are like, oh, I'm hungry. I'm just very reactive to everything that I do. So I'm going to eat. So again, if you can take 5 to 10 minutes, even less than 5 minutes, if you're having a really crazy day and really busy day, to just slow down, that can be a great way to help you manage your intake and reduce hunger in these situations. And then lastly, this is a bonus one, but increase caffeine intake for the day. Caffeine can help lower your appetite, right? It can also give you some extra energy for the day, but there are 3 caveats here. 1, do not consume it too late in the day as it will negatively impact sleep. So we don't want to do it too late in the day. You do want to see how you respond to caffeine. For some, too much caffeine to lead to some mild side effects, anxiety, jitteriness, gut issues, right? And then be careful to have caffeine drinks that have calories on them. So again, if we're getting, oh, just that I can have coffee, then you go and you get the 1,000-calorie coffee. It's, oh, okay, that's probably not going to be great from a energy or a hunger management standpoint. So yeah, so we can use caffeine strategically here in this situation. But again, the key is to not overdo caffeine there with that. Cool. That's it for this episode. Hopefully that gives you some strategies on how to manage your day, right? But we started with, hey, let's make sure that what are some things that cause higher hunger levels? And then how can we manage those hunger levels for that day? So now you have those strategies in place to manage these days when they do happen here. So again, if you have any questions on this or you need help with managing this, my free 30-minute strategy calls for you. The link to that is in the show notes. That's it for this episode, and I'll chat with you guys next time.